He shouldn't have existed. Not in their world, not in their perfect, curated lives. That was the chilling, unspoken truth in the grand Blackwell mansion, a truth whispered only in the silent halls, echoing the shame Richard and Eleanor Blackwell felt for their son Ethan. He was a secret, a burden, a living testament to a genetic anomaly so profound, so unnatural, that they'd hidden him from the moment he drew his first, struggling breath. They didn't know then that this very anomaly, this twisted deviation from the norm, held the key to the world's survival. They only knew he had to be contained. Clara carried the dust of Nigeria in her soul, a resilience born from hardship that the polished surfaces of the Blackwell estate could never erase. Her story, a stark contrast to the sterile perfection around her, began with a whisper of hope and ended in a desperate flight. When her father, a man of quiet dignity and unwavering love, died suddenly in their humble village in Ogun State, Clara's world shattered. Her mother, desperate and vulnerable, succumbed to the persuasive words of a distant relative who promised a better life abroad, a marriage to a wealthy white man in Europe. Clara, then a bright-eyed teenager, was torn from her familiar world, her grief compounded by the bewildering move to a cold foreign land. The better life was a cruel mirage. Her mother's new husband, a brutish man named Johann, was a tyrant behind closed doors. He controlled every penny, denying Clara access to education, twisting her mother's perception, until Clara became the scapegoat for all their woes. The ultimate horror came with his predatory gaze, his whispered threats, and his increasingly brazen sexual advances. He saw her as something to be exploited, whispering vile suggestions of earning her keep in ways that made her blood run cold. Her own mother, caught in Johann's web of manipulation and fear, tragically turned a blind eye, sometimes even echoing his cruel words, pressuring Clara to comply, to make peace. One terrifying night, after another attempt by Johann to corner her, something inside Clara snapped. She couldn't stay. With nothing but the clothes on her back and a few stolen coins, she fled, disappearing into the vast, indifferent city. She worked odd jobs, cleaning, cooking, anything to survive, clinging to her dignity in a world that sought to strip it away. It was through a series of desperate connections that she eventually found herself on a plane to America, driven by the desperate hope for a clean slate. She landed a job as a househelp for a wealthy family, her quiet competence quickly earning her a reputation. It was this reputation that eventually led her to the grand, imposing gates of the Blackwell estate. She applied for the house manager position, armed with a flawless resume and a steely resolve, burying her past deep within her, determined to be seen only for her abilities, never for her vulnerabilities. The prejudice she faced, often subtle, sometimes overt, because of her accent, her skin, her quiet demeanor, fueled her ambition. She would not be broken. The west wing of the Blackwell estate wasn't just a part of the house. It was a fortress, a gilded cage designed to conceal. Behind its reinforced doors, away from prying eyes and judgmental whispers, Ethan Blackwell grew, a ghost in his own home. His days were a monotonous rhythm of solitary lessons, the hushed footsteps of carefully selected staff, and the oppressive silence that his parents enforced, like a second skin. Richard, a titan whose financial empire spanned continents, saw Ethan's critical abnormality as a catastrophic flaw, a direct threat to his meticulously crafted image of invincibility. Eleanor, once a celebrated socialite, had retreated into a shell of brittle perfection, her love for Ethan a fragile thing, perpetually overshadowed by a gnawing fear of exposure. They loved him, in their own twisted way, but their affection was a suffocating blanket woven from fear and shame. Yet despite the suffocating isolation, Ethan's mind was anything but contained. It was a universe of its own, swirling with algorithms, equations, and complex theories that far outstripped his years. He devoured books with a hunger bordering on obsession. His tutors, sworn to absolute secrecy, often left speechless by his uncanny ability to grasp concepts that eluded seasoned academics. From his window, he'd watch the outside world, a kaleidoscope of life he could only imagine, the vibrant chaos, a stark contrast to his sterile existence. He yearned for connection, for the simple touch of another human being, who didn't look at him with pity or fear. Then came Clara, hired as the new house manager. Her presence in the mansion was like a warm, earthy scent in a sterile laboratory. She carried the wisdom of her Nigerian village in her bones, an intuitive sense that hummed beneath the polite veneer of her professional duties. During her interview, the Blackwells had been chillingly clear. The West Wing was forbidden. Ethan, they explained with a detached air, was delicate, requiring absolute solitude. But the silence, that profound, unnatural silence emanating from the West Wing, prickled at Clara's soul. It wasn't the quiet of a resting child. It was the eerie stillness of something hidden. Having known betrayal and a warped version of family in her past, Clara's antennae for hidden suffering were finely tuned. One afternoon, with Richard and Eleanor conspicuously absent, swallowed by another high society event, an inexplicable pull guided Clara's steps. It wasn't a plan, not a defiance, but an instinct. She found herself drifting towards the forbidden corridor, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. The door to Ethan's room was, inexplicably, ajar. A single, trembling push, and she stepped into a room that was both breathtakingly opulent and profoundly desolate. Sunlight streamed through a vast window, but the air felt heavy, devoid of life's usual vibrancy. And then she saw him. Ethan sat hunched by the window, a complex physics text open on his lap, his gaze fixed on the world outside. His head, slightly larger than normal, gave him an almost alien appearance, and his movements were slow, deliberate, a silent testament to his condition. But it was his eyes that struck Clara, deep pools of intelligence, older than his young face suggested, holding a profound, heartbreaking longing. He turned, startled, his initial reaction a flicker of raw panic. He'd never seen anyone like her. Clara, however, didn't flinch. She simply offered a warm, genuine smile, a smile that radiated a peace the mansion had never known. "Hello there, little one," she said, her voice a soft, melodic hum. "My name is Clara." Ethan blinked, his apprehension slowly dissolving into pure curiosity. "You're not supposed to be here," he whispered, his voice thin, almost reedy but clear. "Perhaps not," Clara conceded, moving further into the room, her eyes falling on the book. "Physics, say? That's a big one for a young man." A flicker of pride ignited in Ethan's eyes. "It's fascinating, especially quantum entanglement." Clara, knowing little of quantum physics but everything about human connection, listened intently as Ethan, encouraged by her unwavering gaze, began to explain complex theories with startling clarity. He spoke of particles existing in multiple states, of the interconnectedness of all things, of patterns and probabilities. Clara didn't understand the science, but she understood the thirst for knowledge, the profound loneliness, the sheer brilliance radiating from this hidden child. From that day on, their clandestine meetings became a sacred ritual. She'd bring him stories of her village, tales of community, resilience and simple joys, subtly weaving in lessons of courage and self-acceptance. She never mentioned his condition, choosing instead to see the extraordinary mind, the luminous spirit. She kept her secret, knowing the Blackwell's wrath would be swift and merciless, but she couldn't abandon the fragile, brilliant soul she had discovered. She was his confidant, his window to a world he was denied, and a silent observer of his most incredible, unbelievable ability. Ethan, starved for genuine affection, gravitated towards her, seeing her not just as a kindly caregiver, but as a silent anchor in his isolated world. She became his non-biological mother, the one person he truly confided in. As weeks turned into months, Clara began to orchestrate small, secret escapes. Under the cloak of darkness, or during the Blackwells' infrequent extended trips, she'd gently lead Ethan out of the mansion. Sometimes, it was just to the vast manicured gardens, where she'd point out constellations, and tell him ancient African fables about the stars. Other times, emboldened by their secrecy, she'd take him on fleeting excursions into the nearest quiet town, always disguised, and under the cover of a large hat and sunglasses for Ethan. She'd describe the bustle of the marketplace, the laughter of children playing, the smell of freshly baked bread. She'd tell him stories of the ordinary world, of a bus driver's daily route, of a seamstress who repaired old clothes, of the small, vibrant details of everyday life he had never known. Her voice, rich with the melodies of her homeland, painted vivid pictures in his mind, sparking a joy and curiosity in Ethan that had been dormant for too long. These illicit outings, these whispered tales of normality, filled a void in Ethan's heart that no amount of wealth or academic knowledge could touch. Years bled into a decade. Ethan, now on the cusp of adulthood, remained the Blackwells' carefully guarded secret. But the world outside, oblivious to the genius hidden within those walls, was hurtling towards an abyss. The Global Financial Stability Index, GFSI, the very pulse of international economics, began to flatline, then plummet. Whispers of a digital plague escalated into screams of panic. Cyber attacks, unprecedented in their scale and sophistication, crippled financial institutions. Algorithms that once governed global stock markets were seizing, twisting, collapsing. The culprit? A malevolent, self-evolving digital virus dubbed the Leviathan, a ghost in the machine that systematically corrupted critical data infrastructure worldwide. It was undetectable, untraceable, a perfect weapon of economic annihilation. Governments were paralyzed, experts baffled, their supercomputers futile against its insidious spread. Richard Blackwell's empire, once unshakable, now trembled. His net worth evaporated daily, his companies hemorrhaging capital. He spent sleepless nights in his study, the stark glow of multiple screens illuminating his haggard, defeated face. Eleanor, too, was a shadow of her former self, the daily news reports painting a terrifying picture of a world on the brink. A global economic collapse wasn't a possibility anymore. It was an inevitability, a roaring beast at their doorstep. One evening, as Clara silently served tea, she overheard a fragment of a desperate conversation between Richard and a high-ranking government official. Data cascade failure, crash core, algorithms corrupted beyond repair, irreversible damage, the Leviathan is unfixable. The words hung in the air, cold and heavy. The unbelievable claim, a whisper of salvation ignored. Clara's mind, ever practical, ever seeking the unseen solution, immediately flashed to Ethan. She had witnessed his uncanny ability to see patterns where others saw only chaos, to dissect complex systems with a speed that defied human comprehension. She remembered the market prediction algorithm he'd built as a child, dismissed as a game by his parents, but which had unnerved his tutor with its frightening accuracy. The next day, as the Blackwells were consumed by their despair, Clara approached Ethan with a stack of news printouts detailing the crisis. Ethan, his face unusually grave, scanned them, his eyes darting across the technical jargon with a terrifying intensity. "It's a distributed autonomous agent," he stated, almost to himself after a long, chilling silence. "It's not just a virus, it's evolving, learning from every network it infects. That's why they can't stop it. It's adapting, anticipating every defense." He paused, his gaze sweeping over the elaborate room, a place he now saw not as a sanctuary, but as an unwitting laboratory, a cage that had ironically forced him to develop the very solution no one else could conceive. Clara's heart pounded. "Ethan," she began, her voice barely a whisper, Can you do anything about it?" He looked up, a strange, burning mix of fear and determination in his eyes. I think I can. I've been working on something similar for years. A counter-algorithm, a neural net, designed to identify and neutralize self-evolving threats. I called it the Clara Protocol." Ethan had confided the name to her privately, explaining it was his tribute to her unwavering support, her quiet strength that had taught him more about courage than any book. "But I need access. Real-time, unrestricted access to the global financial network." Clara knew the risks. She was asking him to step into the light, to reveal the hidden part of himself his parents had so desperately tried to conceal. She even called a trusted friend, an old colleague from her househelp days, to confide her plan. "Are you mad, Clara?" her friend had hissed. "You'll lose everything. The Blackwells will crush you. You're risking your future for their secret." But Clara, remembering the dark days of exploitation and the quiet dignity she had fought to reclaim, knew she couldn't stand by. This was not about the Blackwells. It was about doing what was right, and protecting the brilliant boy who had become her heart. She was paying back the trust not of Richard, but of a broken world, and more importantly, the trust that Ethan had placed in her. That night, Clara did the unthinkable. She broke every rule, risked her job, her reputation, her entire life. She found an old, encrypted satellite phone belonging to Richard and, with Ethan's precise, whispered instructions, connected it to a forgotten secure internet line in the mansion's rarely used server room. Ethan, a frail silhouette illuminated by the glow of the screen, began to work. His fingers, despite their slight tremor, flew across the keyboard, dancing a furious ballet. Lines of code scrolled, a language only he understood, a symphony of logic and intuition. He wasn't just typing, he was thinking in algorithms, seeing data streams as living entities, comprehending the very essence of the digital world. He was in his element, a silent maestro conducting a desperate global symphony of salvation. Hours blurred into days, fueled by Clara's quiet presence, and the occasional cup of strong black coffee. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan leaned back, a faint, exhausted smile playing on his lips. "It's done," he whispered, his voice raw. "The Clara protocol has been deployed. It's reversing the corruption, isolating the Leviathan's core, and patching the vulnerabilities. It will take time, but the cascade has stopped. The bleeding has stopped." Clara, though not fully grasping the technical enormity, felt a wave of profound relief wash over her. She immediately tried to contact Richard, but he was unreachable, lost in the maelstrom of the unfolding crisis. The next morning, the news channels, which had been a relentless torrent of doom, began to report something miraculous. The global financial stability index, which had been in freefall, had not just stabilized, it had begun, almost imperceptibly at first, to climb. Experts were baffled, governments bewildered. They spoke of a self-correction, of unforeseen systemic resilience, completely unaware that the world had been pulled back from the brink by a boy hidden in a gilded cage, operating under the watchful eye of his unlikely guardian. Richard and Eleanor, gaunt and emotionally drained, returned home to a world that was slowly beginning to breathe again. Richard's companies were recovering, the panic subsiding. He still had no idea how or why. Clara knew this was the moment. She led Richard and Eleanor to the forgotten server room where Ethan, looking frail but triumphant, sat before the screens. On the main monitor, lines of data confirmed the victory of the Clara protocol. "He did it," Clara said, her voice clear, resolute. "Ethan saved us all." Richard and Eleanor stared, first at Clara, then at Ethan, then at the complex, undeniably successful data on the screen. Disbelief warred with dawning, horrifying comprehension. Richard, the man who prided himself on controlling every variable, every risk, was utterly speechless. The Leviathan was a self-learning AI designed for systemic economic collapse, Ethan explained, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "My counter-algorithm, the Clara protocol, was built to recognize and neutralize such threats. It analyzed its patterns, identified its source code, and initiated a system-wide cleanse. It's now creating firewalls and redundancies that will make similar attacks impossible in the future." He looked at Clara, a silent acknowledgement passing between them, before turning back to his parents. "I named it after Clara because without her, none of this would have been possible. She believed in me when no one else did." Eleanor, tears streaming down her face, rushed to Ethan, embracing him fiercely, holding him without an iota of hesitation or fear for the first time in years. Richard, still processing the monumental scale of his son's achievement, slowly approached. He saw not a boy with an abnormality, but a brilliant mind, a savior. You did this?" Richard stammered, his voice thick with awe. Ethan nodded, a small, weary but proud smile on his face. "I told you, Father. I can see patterns others can't." The story of how the world was saved remained a tightly guarded secret, but the mention of the Clara Protocol in Ethan's official classified report piqued the interest of the highest echelons of global government. They knew a groundbreaking algorithm had saved them, and they knew its name. When word eventually leaked, not of Ethan but of the Clara Protocol, the media descended. The who behind the what became the most compelling mystery. Meanwhile, in a quiet European city, Clara's mother, broken and alone, had seen the news reports of a woman named Clara, a rising star, being hailed for her involvement in a global economic miracle. The name echoed in her memory. Shortly after Clara's flight, Johann had been arrested, caught by authorities for the same predatory offenses he had attempted with Clara, and he had, from behind bars, confessed to the authorities why Clara had truly run away, implicating her mother's complicity in his abuse. The truth finally had shattered her mother's delusion. She'd descended into a deep depression, haunted by guilt and shame. Seeing Clara's name in the headlines, a flicker of hope and a profound wave of regret washed over her. She used what little resources she had to find Clara's contact information, desperately hoping for a chance to atone. Clara, initially hesitant, agreed to meet her mother. The reunion was tearful, raw, and filled with decades of unspoken pain. Her mother, truly repentant, begged for forgiveness, detailing Johann's imprisonment and his confession. Clara, seeing the genuine remorse and the toll of her mother's own suffering, slowly, tentatively, began the arduous process of healing. Their relationship wouldn't be easy, but it was a start, a fragile bridge built on forgiveness. Clara, initially reluctant to step into the spotlight, was eventually convinced by Ethan and the now grateful Blackwells to accept a public role as an advisor on ethical AI and digital security. They crafted a narrative that protected Ethan's identity while highlighting Clara's role in inspiring the solution. Ethan behind the scenes was recognized as a prodigy, but it was Clara who became the public face of the success, a symbol of hope and resilience. Clara became a global star. Her quiet strength, her compelling backstory, carefully redacted to exclude the darkest parts of her past, focusing instead on her journey from humble beginnings. And her unwavering belief in Ethan made her a beloved figure. She used her newfound platform to champion education and opportunities for marginalized communities. The Blackwells, humbled and profoundly grateful, became her staunchest allies, providing resources and connections she could never have dreamed of. With their unwavering support, Clara went back to school, not for a quick certificate, but for a full university degree, then a master's in cybersecurity and AI ethics, followed by a PhD. She absorbed knowledge with the same hunger she'd seen in Ethan, her experiences giving her a unique perspective on the human element of technology. She became a sought-after speaker, a consultant to world leaders, and an advocate for a more equitable digital future. Her story, from the despair of her father's death and Johann's cruel advances to her quiet defiance and ultimate triumph, resonated with millions. The prejudice she'd faced became a testament to her unyielding spirit. She had paid back trust not with money, but with integrity, proving that true value lies not in wealth or status, but in character and unwavering belief. The mansion, once a gilded prison, was transformed. Ethan was no longer confined. His world expanded on his own terms. He still preferred his quiet studies, but now, the door to the outside was open, no longer a barrier, but an invitation. Clara remained his confidant, his non-biological mother, a testament to a bond forged in secrecy and crisis. The world had been pulled back from the brink by a young man who saw beyond the visible, who understood the intricate dance of data, and who, with the quiet courage of a nanny, was finally allowed to unleash his true potential. And at the heart of that miracle stood Clara, the woman who defied her past, broke the rules, and became an unexpected global hero, proving that sometimes the most profound impact comes from the most unlikely of places. The story of Ethan and Clara, of hidden genius and quiet courage, isn't just a tale. It's a mirror reflecting the hidden potential within each of us, and the profound impact one life can have when given the chance to shine. Clara's journey teaches us that resilience can bloom from the harshest soil. From the desperate flight from a manipulative stepfather and a mother caught in his web, to finding her footing in a new land and ultimately saving the world, Clara's story is a powerful testament to defying expectations and rising above prejudice. She found her purpose not in wealth or status, but in recognizing and nurturing a unique brilliance in another, even when others chose to hide it. Her journey reminds us that true strength isn't about the absence of struggle, but the unwavering spirit to overcome it. And Ethan, his story is a poignant reminder that true value often lies hidden, unconventional, waiting to be seen beyond the surface. Shamed and secluded because of his perceived abnormality, his genius was almost lost to the world. It took the empathetic eye and brave heart of Clara to see beyond his condition and empower him to become the unlikely savior of nations. This story, like every story we share on Engaging Voices, aims to do more than just entertain. It seeks to provoke thought, to stir empathy, and to inspire action. It's about uncovering the profound narratives that shape our world, narratives that might just change yours. If this story resonated with you, if it made you question, feel, or simply look at the world a little differently, then you understand the power of an untold story. Don't let these voices remain unheard. Subscribe to our channel to ensure you never miss another powerful narrative. Like this video to help us share these essential stories with a wider audience. And most importantly, enable notifications so you're always among the first to witness the next tale that challenges, inspires, and engages your heart and mind. Let's continue to uncover the extraordinary. Your engagement makes all the difference.